After my wife's passing, I relocated to be nearer to my grandchildren. My son-in-law changed the locks on the bathroom. "We need boundaries," he explained. He insisted that I ask for permission to eat. My daughter, meanwhile, continued stirring soup without looking up. "He's right, Dad," she interjected. "You're not a guest. You're a burden." When they went on vacation, they left me without food and took away my car keys. What I did next was shocking, even to me. My wife had succumbed to cancer the previous year. It began in her breasts and spread rapidly. Within 8 months, she was gone. I was there for her every day during chemotherapy in hospice, through the silence at the end. When it was finally over, I found myself sitting in the house, staring at her old slippers by the bed. I couldn't sleep or eat. At 68, I felt as though I had already died. After the funeral, silence enveloped me. Friends stopped reaching out, and the church community that had brought meals for a week eventually ceased their efforts. My daughter Dana checked in occasionally, while her husband, Rick, did so less frequently. Eventually, Dana suggested that I move in with them in Louisville, to be closer to my grandchildren, claiming it would keep me busy. I sold my house, packed what little I had, and moved. I wasn't expecting a warm welcome, but what I encountered was unexpected. Upon my arrival, Rick remained on the porch while I carried in my suitcase. Dana gave me a quick hug and instructed the kids to greet their grandfather. They offered polite hugs before rushing off to their screens. The house was spacious, immaculate, and eerily quiet. Rick led me down to the basement where I would be staying. It was finished, but cold featuring. A concrete floor, a thin rug, a futon, and a mini fridge, but no stove, sink, or windows. There was a bathroom, but before I could enter, Rick handed me a key. "This is for the basement bathroom," he said. "We just want to keep things organized," he added, as if that clarified everything. Not wanting to spark a conflict on my first day, I nodded in agreement. The following morning, I awoke sore from the futon and went upstairs to make coffee. Dana was at the stove, stirring something, while Rick sat at the table with his laptop. As I approached the pantry, he looked up and asked, "Going somewhere?" Thinking he was joking, I laughed, but he remained serious. "We'd prefer you to ask. First," he said, "we're teaching the kids about structure. We can't have people just grabbing food whenever they want." I realized then that I was just people now. Dana continued to stir her soup without glancing over. Then she stated, "He's right, Dad. You're not a guest. You're a burden." The flatness of her tone felt scripted, and my chest tightened as I nodded and retreated downstairs. The word burden echoed in my mind throughout the day. From that point on, I kept to myself, staying in the basement and ordering what I could afford to eat. They didn't invite me to join them for dinner, and I always complied when they texted me asking for help picking the kids up from school or folding laundry. I complied even when Rick rolled his eyes at my inept folding skills, and even when they had guests over, pretending I wasn't living there. One evening, Rick requested I move my shoes to my area to prevent the kids from tripping over them, even though they were neatly lined up by the door. Another night, Dana asked me to minimize noise at night. Despite my efforts to walk quietly in socks, the breaking point came when they announced a family vacation to Myrtle Beach for 5 days. I asked if I could join them and cover my own expenses, but Dana claimed it wasn't the right time, while Rick insisted we need some nuclear family bonding. I offered to watch the house while they were away, but Rick replied dismissively, "You'll be here anyway." On the day of their departure, Rick came downstairs and removed the car keys from their hook. "Just a safety precaution," he said. "We don't want you getting lost." When I asked if I could at least go to the store, Rick smiled and said, "We stocked your fridge." They hadn't. After they drove away, I opened the mini fridge only to find a bottle of mustard and an old bottle of water, nothing more. The pantry upstairs was padlocked. I opened the trash to discover 2 untouched loaves of bread and a rotisserie chicken, a clear sign that they had deliberately thrown away food before leaving a message for me. Sitting alone at their kitchen table, I felt no sadness, only a growing anger towards my daughter. After everything I had done for her those nights when I rocked her to sleep during asthma attacks, funding her college and wedding, I didn't plan my next move. It just unfolded. I entered Rick's office, where he often boasted about his home vault to neighbors, as if it elevated his status. I knew the code: 2007, their wedding year, and 11, his old college jersey number. I had seen him input it once while I was retrieving the mail for him. Inside, I found petty cash, 2 watches, and a loaded Glock in its case. I took $300 in 20s but left the gun untouched. I also left a note. You took the keys, you locked the food. I'm not your hostage. I'm not your child. I'm not your burden. I called a cab and paid in cash, heading to a modest extended stay hotel across town. It had a lingering smell of cigarettes, but at least I could breathe. That night, I enjoyed a burger, fries, and a beer. The first hot meal I had in days, and slept soundly. The next morning, I opened my laptop and contacted my lawyer. My daughter was unaware that before my wife passed, she had urged me to set aside money for emergencies, expressing distrust towards Rick. I had heeded her advice. We had $140,000 in life insurance, and she had instructed me to safeguard some of it for myself. I used part of those funds to purchase a small duplex in a working-class neighborhood in Louisville, one side for me, and the other side for someone who needed it more than Dana ever had. I met Lisa at the food pantry. She was a single mother of 2 trying to escape an abusive ex. I offered her the other half of the duplex for just $1 a month until she could regain her footing. She cried, expressing that no one had ever shown her such kindness. Meanwhile, Rick left me a voicemail filled with feigned outrage. You stole from us? You better come back and explain yourself before I call the cops. I sent Rick a single message. Call them and explain why you took my keys and locked up food as if I were an animal. Since then, I haven't heard from him. I blocked both their numbers after that. The only pain that lingers is missing my grandkids. But I've come to terms with it. Rick and Dana tried to diminish my worth, to make me feel insignificant. It wasn't until I left that I remembered who I truly was. 3 weeks after moving into the duplex, I began to breathe freely again. There were no locks on the doors and no one monitoring my every move. I would wake up early, brew my own coffee, sit on the porch, and simply listen to the birds. Such peace is a treasure you don't appreciate until it's stripped away. Following week, Lisa and her 2 boys moved in next door with hardly anything to their name, just one small suitcase, broken laptop, and a box of canned food from the church pantry. The boys were quiet, while Lisa appeared worn, as if she hadn't felt safe in years. I offered her my wife's old couch and picked up a few essentials from Craigslist: a table, bunk beds, and a microwave. She was moved to tears, expressing that she felt like God had sent me. I reassured her with honesty, telling her that I was just an old man with no one left, and she had given me a reason to care again. Life was good and simple until I spotted Dana's car parked down the street one Tuesday morning. I had just returned from the grocery store and saw the familiar gray SUV with tinted windows parked about 5 houses down, not directly in front of my place. I stood there for a moment, groceries in hand, just staring at it, till it eventually drove away. 2 days later, a letter arrived in my mailbox without a return address. Inside was a photo of me with Lisa's boys on the porch, smiling as I helped them build a birdhouse. Scrawled in black Sharpie across the photo were the words, "You replaced your grandkids with trash." There was no signature, but I didn't need one. That night, someone slashed my tires. It felt personal. My neighbor across the street reported seeing a man in a hoodie lurking around my car at midnight, trying to keep a low profile but limping. Visibly, I knew Rick had undergone knee surgery last fall. I chose not to involve the police. I didn't want to stir up more trouble. But after that incident, something shifted in me. I was done pretending that my situation was resolved. I sought out a new lawyer, one who was sharper and more aggressive than the last. I recounted everything, how I had been mistreated, controlled, and ultimately abandoned. I had photos, text messages, and Rick's voicemail as evidence. I asked one crucial question. Can I take steps to ensure they never come near me or my money again? His response was a knowing smile. Oh, yes. We redrafted my will, securing it with a third-party trustee, and legally excluded Dana and Rick from all documents. I removed their power of attorney and changed my health proxy. The lawyer even assisted me in establishing a trust in Lisa's name for her children. Just when I thought everything was secured, Rick showed up at the duplex. It was midday, and I was watering the front lawn when he pulled into the driveway as if nothing had happened. He approached with arms outstretched. Fake smile plastered on his face. "Hey, we need to talk, old man," he said. I didn't respond. He continued, "I know you've been making moves, trust funds, lawyers. I get it. Okay, you're upset, but we're family." As he stepped closer, I noticed that familiar, deceitful glint in his eyes. Then he uttered something chilling. "You really want to leave everything to some stray woman with bastard kids? Think. That's what your wife would have wanted." I stood my ground, unflinching. "You need to leave right now." Instead, he smirked. "I just came to say we're contesting everything, the will, the house, all of it. You're not in your right mind. You've got a history of depression, right? We'll make the case." I didn't react, simply turned and locked the door behind me. 5 minutes later, I called my new lawyer to inform him of what transpired. He advised me to start documenting any threats, recommended installing cameras, and suggested creating a paper trail. That night, I warned Lisa and the boys to stay inside after dark. Rick had crossed a line, and he was about to learn that I no longer played nice. I installed security cameras that evening, one at the front door, one in the back alley, one on the side fence, Kane, and another facing the street. My lawyer helped me register everything to ensure any footage would hold up in court. He also advised me to maintain a log of all incidents, detailing dates and times. 3 days later, Dana appeared unannounced. She didn't knock, but marched through the side gate, shouting from my porch, "Dad, come out. I need to talk to you." Lisa, noticing the commotion, peeked out her window and called me immediately. I stepped outside and locked eyes with my daughter. She looked worn out, her hair disheveled, no makeup, and her eyes red with tears. For a fleeting moment, I thought she might be there to apologize. Instead, she thrust a folder into my hands. "This is a petition for guardianship," she stated. "You're clearly being manipulated. You've severed ties with your family, moved your money to strangers, and we're not going to let you destroy everything Mom left for us." I stood there, speechless, as I opened the folder and confirmed its authenticity. She had hired a lawyer, claiming I was mentally unstable and that Lisa was preying on a grieving old man. That's how they described her in the papers, preying. Holding the folder, I looked Dana in the eye and asked the only question that mattered. "Do you truly believe I'm not right in the head, or is this all about the money?" She didn't respond. Instead, she turned and stormed down the steps, climbed into her SUV, and sped away like a teenager throwing a tantrum. My heart raced as I processed what had just happened. She aimed to take control of me, of everything. As if I were a tool she had forgotten until I became useful again. I returned inside and showed the paperwork to Lisa, whose hands trembled as she absorbed the information. "They'll come after you too," I warned. "I've already labeled you a predator." "I don't care what they call me," she replied. "I just don't want to see you get hurt." The next day, my lawyer filed a motion to dismiss Dana's guardianship attempt and also sought a restraining order against Rick, citing the vandalism and threats. He indicated that we had a solid case, but warned me that things would likely get ugly before improving. He was correct. 2 weeks later, I received an unexpected visit from Child Protective Services CPs. Someone had reported Lisa for child neglect and suggested she was living with a dangerous elderly man exhibiting mental instability. They questioned her boys, inspected her pantry, and even asked if I had ever been alone with them. After they left, Lisa broke down in tears. "I knew it," she whispered. "I knew they'd use your love against you." The case was closed 2 days later, with CPS concluding there was no cause for concern, but the damage was already done. Lisa's boys were frightened, and she struggled to sleep. That night, I called my lawyer again, determined to protect what little peace we had left. I made it clear to my lawyer that I wanted to go beyond merely defending myself. I aimed to expose Rick and Dana for what they truly were. So we began our investigation. It turned out that Rick's business, a consulting operation he ran from, a shared office space, was under investigation for fraud. My lawyer uncovered 3 civil complaints against him. One involved a client who claimed Rick promised a government contract that never existed. Another was from a woman who alleged that he charged her twice for the same strategy package. As we delved deeper into the financial records, the situation worsened. Rick had heavily mortgaged their home with Dana, and they were in over their heads financially. This explained their sudden interest in my finances. They were desperate. I now had proof that they were lying, manipulating, and scrambling for money. But then it took a darker turn. One morning I woke up to find a dead bird. On my front step, its neck broken, wings folded, feathers scattered everywhere. The security camera caught someone in a hoodie lurking around my property just after 3 a.m., limping as they made their escape. I sent the footage to the police, and this time they took it seriously. Rick received a visit from them, and suddenly I had leverage. However, I wasn't ready to use it just yet. I was waiting for the perfect moment to make them feel the weight of everything they had. Put me through. In the days following the dead bird incident, Rick and Dana fell silent. There were no more letters or visits. My lawyer informed me that the restraining order against Rick was being processed and that CPS had cleared Lisa. It seemed they were backing off. Perhaps out of fear, but I knew better. They were merely changing tactics. Then came the big blow. I received a letter from the court indicating that Dana had filed for full financial conservatorship. She was attempting to declare me mentally unfit to manage my own finances. To support her claim, she submitted an old email I had sent her after my wife died when I was engulfed in grief. In that message, I had written, "I don't know why I'm still here. Some days I just want to sleep and not wake up." She twisted my words, telling the court I was suicidal and being manipulated by a woman with no familial ties and a criminal background. Lisa was accused of exploiting me and my finances. I had only 30 days to respond before a court-appointed investigator would evaluate my mental state. It was the dirtiest move they could have made. When Lisa read the papers, she was in tears, expressing her fear of being the reason my family attempted to destroy me. I reassured her, "You didn't destroy anything." They did. But here's the part I hadn't shared yet. I had been planning my own strategy for months. The moment Rick threatened to challenge my will, I began documenting everything, every message, every visit, the CPS incident, the guardianship filing, and even the dead bird. I compiled a comprehensive report with videos, emails, text messages, camera footage, and screenshots of their fabricated claims. My lawyer organized it all into a neat binder titled "Why They'll Never Touch My Money." That wasn't all I had. I also hired a private investigator, which cost me $6,000, but it was worth every penny. What he uncovered was shocking. Rick had opened a credit card in my name, using my Social Security number. He racked up nearly $7,800 on electronics, flights, and meals, even charging part of the Myrtle Beach trip to it. I hadn't noticed sooner because the bills were being sent to a P.O. box he rented. Pure fraud. This discovery was the final nail in the coffin. I contacted the bank, froze the account, and filed a police report. My lawyer submitted copies of everything to the court handling the conservatorship case. That same week, Dana's lawyer dropped her case, citing too much exposure and too many lies, But I was just getting started. I filed a civil suit against Rick for financial fraud and emotional abuse. My lawyer presented every piece of evidence we had against him: the business scams, the CPS stunt, the credit card fraud, the threats, and even the dead bird incident. We included statements from Lisa, the kids, neighbors, the private investigator. In the meantime, Dana attempted to distance herself from Rick's actions. She called me, tears in her voice, saying, "Dad, I didn't know Rick was doing that. I never wanted to hurt you. I was just scared you were throwing everything away." I asked her one key question: why didn't you stop him when he locked the food? She fell silent. I continued, "You allowed your husband to treat your father like a dog. You stirred soup while he made me ask permission to eat." She just sobbed and I hung up. A few months later, the court ruled in my favor. Rick was ordered to pay damages and a warrant was issued for the credit card fraud. His consulting business collapsed. He attempted to launch a new venture, but word spread quickly. That's the thing about scammers. Once their true nature is revealed, no one forgets. 6 months later, Dana filed for divorce, but I didn't respond to her letter. I left Louisville shortly after. I gifted the duplex to Lisa, transferring the deed fully into her name. She cried so hard she could barely stand. I hugged her boys goodbye, urging them to always protect their mother. Then I packed my belongings and left Kentucky for good. I found a small house in a quiet town in Missouri, complete with a porch swing and a garden out back. I joined the local VFW, made friends at the diner, and even started walking dogs at the shelter on weekends, sometimes. I still miss Dana, the version of her who used to sit on the porch with me when she was 10, asking if birds ever got tired of flying. But that little girl is gone, and I've come to a crucial realization. Blood doesn't define family, respect does. When you allow someone to treat you like a burden long enough, you start to believe it. But once you decide you're no longer willing to accept that, everything changes. They tried to break me, but I rebuilt myself surrounded by better people. I will never be a burden to anyone again.